Welcome to the screencast of proteins by Ms. Chen. Now, let's define what exactly is a protein. A protein is a nutrient that helps us to do several functions. For number one, it helps us to grow, repair, and maintain our cells. Our body are actually made up of millions and millions of cells, as we have learned earlier. Okay, and so we need the protein to help us to grow, repair, and maintain these cells, as they often reproduce and die by the millions every day. That's actually our basic building blocks of our body. It also helps us to build muscles, like you can see this guy here, hunky, ripped, six-pack, eight-pack. I know a lot of guys want to be like this. Okay, so but how to be like this? Firstly, you need to eat a lot of protein, because protein helps to build muscles. And as you learned earlier, protein also have at least produce 4 kilocalories a gram of energy. But you must know that protein is actually our last resort. So that means if carbohydrates and fat intake is not enough, we will have to depend on proteins, and that's not very advisable, as you can see later on. It's made out of basically amino acids, and some amino acids cannot be made in the body. So since it cannot be made in the body, we will need these amino acids. We need to get them from food, and since it's a need, it's an essential, and in English, essential means very important. There are 22 amino acids in all. If I'm not wrong, I think there are 9 of them which are essential. Now, sources mean where the food comes from. Now, animal food are considered to be of high biological value. High biological value means they contain all the essential or very important amino acids. This can be trouble for vegetarians, as firstly they do not eat meat, they do not eat fish, they do not eat eggs, they are cheese or poultry. Now, what are vegetarians? Vegetarians are people who choose to eat vegetables or plant food only. These are called very strict vegetarians. So they don't want to touch meat at all, because they believe that maybe killing animals are very cruel. So they believe everyone should have a life. Now, there's some vegetarians who do not mind eating eggs, do not mind eating dairy food, or even mind eating fish. So these are not really pure, truly strict vegetarians. Okay. Now, these strict vegetarians, they turn to plant-based food for proteins. So examples can include legumes, potatoes, rice, pulses like beans, all this, legumes, all this. Okay. Now, however, they do not have all the essential proteins, because they are known as low biological value. Okay. They are known as low biological value because they do not contain all the essential proteins. So what people do is that they usually combine food to get all of them. So for example, let's say legumes have essential amino acid 1 but do not have amino acid 2, while potatoes have essential amino acid 2 but no amino acid 1. So what they'll do is that they'll make a food dish that combines potatoes together with legumes. Okay, so they can combine these two together. Soya beans are the only plant food that is considered complete or high biological value. Yet studies have also shown by eating too much soya bean, you can actually decrease your brain cells by 20%. So you should eat everything in moderation. Now, this is an issue with the third world country. We will take a look at the real pictures later on. What happens is that when there's very little protein, there are two ways. This is usually more known, kwashiorkor. So what happens is the hair color changes. You will see that the person, now this, why it seems to be pictures of babies, because in developed countries, babies are usually the ones who suffer the most. So what happens is that they show a face of misery, a real misery. They call it the moon face because it becomes swollen. And they have very thin muscles. They seem to have fat, but it's not, because it's edema. Edema means swelling of water. So the water is swelling, making the body look big, and especially the stomach. It's not food, it's air and water in there. Now another one is marasmus. Marasmus, there's totally no food. Okay, even though the hair is normal, hungry. Both of them are very hungry. There's totally no fat. Grossly underweight, and it looks like a little old man. These are pictures of kwashiorkor. Kwashiorkor, as what we spoke earlier, I like that. No food. They seem healthy because they look, plump here, but actually it's just swellings, edema. The stomach is the biggest sign of kwashiorkor. For marasmus, it's totally nothing. As you can see from this boy, he looks like a little old man because he has no food. He doesn't even have energy to swat the fly away. And look at his rib cage. This is not dieting out because they want to diet and be thin. They have really nothing left. Look at his bones. He has to be fed to a drip. And what is very sad about kwashiorkor and marasmus is that they usually take place in Africa, where there's a lot of issues like corruption, and the government is not managing the country well. So therefore, there's a lot of food that are not given to these people, and they have to suffer. And most of them who suffer are the babies because they can't get any energy to food. So most of them actually die even before maybe reaching the age of 2. Now, in developed countries, however, we have another problem. So developed countries like America, Singapore, instead of being skinny, we find a lot of people wants to be skinny because they're eating way too much food. They're eating way too much protein. So as you can see from here, as evolution, we become a normal human being, and we have become obese. Obese means eating way too much food. And protein can also, what it can result is that loss of calcium. That means we need calcium, a mineral, for our bones to be strong and healthy. But eating too much protein can actually cause calcium to be leached or taken out from our bones in our body, and we might end up with very weak bones instead. Now, in the food groups, it's down here, protein. It helps in the growth and repair of our body. Okay, usually Singaporeans tend to overeat the amount of protein. One good serving size is actually 1 palm size. 1 palm size will do. Okay. Now, another one that provides us proteins is dairy. Dairy also provides us a lot of proteins, but dairy also have a lot of saturated fat. So unless you're choosing food like low-fat milk, all this, then you can get more proteins and less fat. Okay, so come to the part of heat on protein. So every time you cook proteins, meat, all this, now we're taking a look at eggs. Okay, because egg is also protein. So when you have fire, you have heat. So what happened, for example, here, proteins will turn from liquid to solid, and this process is called coagulation. Coagulation. Okay. However, when food is heated for too long, it might become too hard and too difficult to eat. So let's take a look at this example where this person will be poaching an egg. There will be some terms you might not know, like denaturation. And these are all scientific terms for cooking. Okay, but you do not need to know them now. So let's take a look.
Okay, today I'm going to show you how to cook or poach an egg. So basically what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to tell you about the temperature that I have it on, and I always have it on medium to low heat. And what I do before I add my egg to that water is I make sure that I add a dash of vinegar, and there's probably about 1/4 cup there, and then I agitate it. Now the reason why I add the vinegar is it's going to help the egg to coagulate, and it also cools the water slightly, so does agitating it. When I add the egg now, it should stay in a relatively close little ball, and the vinegar is actually going to help it to coagulate, so it will become a nice ball-shaped egg. What we're waiting for is probably about 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how you want your egg cooked. If you're doing eggs Benedict or something like that, most people would assume that their poached egg would be slightly runny in the middle, and a slightly runny egg is going to mean that the egg yolk has not totally coagulated. So whenever I'm about to check my egg, I always put I check it with like a slotted spoon or something to make sure that it's still quite runny in the middle. But yeah, if you like your eggs well done, then that means that they're completely coagulated. Okay, your poached egg probably take about 2 to 3 minutes to cook, and depending on how runny you want your yolk, and you should be able to have it slightly bounce back when you actually touch the surface. Make sure that you wash your hands before you do that. When I actually put it onto the plate, I always make sure that I put it onto some paper towel first to soak up any water or any vinegar, because it's not nice to serve with your breakfast. So that's a poached egg.
Alright, so we come to the end. That's a review question. So there are quite a number of review questions down here. I want you to pause the video and answer them. You can look through the slides that I've given you, or you can even use a textbook. Mainly, I need you to read up and be sure of these questions, the answers to these questions. So until I see you next time, this is Miss Chen.